Welcome. This is my first or my second live stream. I tried one a bit earlier, but it did not go too well. What you guys are looking at right now is the YouTube Studio live streaming main screen, just because I want to test to see if it's actually connected and working. There is a delay, so by the time I will see it will be after you guys have already seen it. So okay, this is all connected now. I can close all of this. I had a couple people in the previous live stream, and essentially what happened was I was having issues. So yeah, I went offline, fixed them, and now I'm back. What I've done is, it turns out that when I uploaded my stuff to GitHub, I didn't want to repeat some files, stuff like the Android file, the build files. I thought that's kind of a waste because, you know, it's pretty much the same. So I only uploaded the actual lib folder. Well, what happened is now I'm on a different laptop. So when I did a git pull, it pulled those files, but not the build files. So I've had to recreate the project so I could get, the other files as well. One of the things it has not done for me though is pulled the pub/spec.yaml, which of course makes total sense. Why would it do that? Okay. First thing I'm going to have to do here is actually add the get package, because it was one I was using a lot, and yeah, that's why I have all these errors. And then when I save this, it's going to go ahead and load my stuff, and that should hopefully get rid of most of my errors. Okay. And I have to tell you guys 100% honestly, I have not looked at this code in a very long time. The last time I looked at this code was when I recorded the previous video, which was a while ago. And as a result, I don't remember where I was. I do not remember what we were doing. I just remember we were doing something about Hive. Okay. What I'm doing now is I've named my file here something a little bit different. I don't have the API key, and I can't copy the API key on a live stream. Problem. Right, I'll do that afterwards. I'll just have to do everything without the API key, which means it's not going to be able to be run. Okay, I also need to add the HTTP package, which will be this one. And now I have an error here. What I'm going to do to resolve the error is just delete an integration test. So there's a conflict between integration test and HTTP. I'm going to delete the version from HTTP and try to save it again to see if that will allow Flutter to resolve the conflict for me, and it has. This is what I would do these days if I have some kind of conflict between packages. Just delete the version number. That basically tells Flutter, I don't care what version you use, just get me something so I can use that. Okay, so that's fine. Over here it's going to be the same thing. I just need to delete the word tutorial because this new project has a slightly different name than the other project. Okay, and it seems that was the only thing I had to do. So now let's try to figure out where we were and what we were doing. Here I'm in my remote data source. So I made a search movie function, I made a from JSON. So of course what this is going to do is go to that, oh, this thing's blocked. I'm going to switch off my recording because it's not doing anything. It's blocked. Okay. So what this is going to do is load that data from our external API. In this case, I'm using OMDB API. Okay, but that's not what we're going to do today. Today, what we're going to do is build that local data source. Let me see. Okay, so we're going to create a new file here, local data source.dart. And the first thing I'm going to do is open the remote one and put it on the side, because I always do stuff like this. Why would I make things difficult for myself? If I have similar code, I want to see the similar code to make things more simple. Okay, I'm quickly going to check this to see if things are working. I have a comment from Mishkat saying, "Hey man, after a long time." Definitely, dude. It's a pleasure to see you. Okay, but back to Hive. So this is what we're using, and honestly, I have not used Hive in a few months. The reason for this is because in most of my live projects, and you'll probably find the same thing, I use Firebase, and Firebase is going to handle the storage for us. When you use Firebase, you don't really need a local data source. Firebase is also going to handle the caching for us and all that stuff. And in fact, in the next module, I do want to go over Firebase. I was thinking if I just want to drop this project and just move on to the next one, teach Firebase and go forward like that. But then I figured I don't want to have like a half completed project. So I at least want to get something done here to see how it works. But that said, I haven't done this in a long time, so who knows how it's going to go. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my own GitHub, and I have this different movie browser, which what I did with this, I don't know if you guys know Riso Coda. Riso Coda is another guy on YouTube. He makes these more advanced YouTube tutorials, and I was going through his tutorials initially when I was first learning Flutter. That was back in like March, April of last year. And I took one of his series, which was about TDD, and I tried to take his ideas and apply it to a different project. In that case, it was a movie browser. And I'm hoping that in this movie browser, I have a local data source. I do, nice. So I can copy the code, which I don't know how to, which I forgot how to use. We'll see. So I'm gonna make this bigger. Gonna look really quickly. So I made this the future dynamic. I don't think I need this to be a future dynamic, but we'll look at that later. First thing I want to do actually is look at my pubspec.yaml, because I know there are going to be dependencies which I need. So I'm just moving these side by side. My previous videos were, a bit, like I tried to make them a bit smoother. Since this is a live stream, it's not. You can see all of the mistakes I make. You can see all of the awkwardness. This is what real coding is actually like. Things are not super smooth. We don't know what we're doing. We make mistakes. We often have different projects open on the side and so on. Okay, so what do I need? So that time I was using GetIt. Here I won't, because I'm going to use GetX's dependency injection. It's actually one of my favorite things about GetX. We'll get to that later. I used Flutter block in the previous one. I'm not going to use it here because I'm using GetX. I use Dart. Again, no need to use it. HTTP, I already have. Intel, I don't think I need Intel. I might use it later, we'll see. Data connection checker, I don't need it. So what I do need is Hive. I also need Hive Flutter. And I think I need path provider. I spelled that wrong, which is why I didn't find it. Path provider. There we go. I'm going to delete the version names from here, just in case I have a conflict. And now I'm going to add dev dependencies over here, and that's going to be for Hive generator. And I believe that's the only one I need. Again, remove this. I don't need Makito. Build runner I might need actually. Yeah, I need build runner. Build runner often causes conflicts, so I'm going to delete the version number. I don't care. And see how this goes. And I think that's going to be it. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is make this big. And which one's this one? And why does it have errors? Because the API key, that's fine. I can't fix that now. And I'm just going to put this on the side. And the reason I'm doing this is because the local data source will have a few things in common with my remote data source, specifically the structure of the classes. And normally, this is something you should really know. You should remember the structure of your classes, but I haven't looked at this project in about 2 months. I cannot remember what I was doing at all. I just remember I had my interface and I need to implement my interface, but my remote one was pretty much the same. So I'm gonna basically copy my code from the other one. So I'm gonna start just with the outline of what I'm doing. So I'm gonna say class local data source, not store, source. I'm just doing that because I called this my remote data source, so I don't want the two names to fall out of alignment. But in reality, it doesn't really matter. Data source, database, data store, whatever, I don't care. And I'm going to say this implements the local data interface. And that, of course, will be imported over there. Fix the import to make it look nice, save. And now it's going to give me an error, which is exactly what I want. The reason for this is because I haven't implemented those two things yet, which were these two. And the reason I made this an abstract class and I did it this way is to force me to need to re-implement them to basically help my memory, because, you know, people make mistakes, people forget things. And for now, I don't think I need anything. So I'm just gonna make the constructor like this, but I might need to change this later. I really don't know. We'll see. By the way, guys, I still remember, like, I haven't used Hive in a while, so I'm gonna need to use my old code to remember parts of it, but I do still remember why we do the things we do, so I will be able to explain it. Don't worry about that. Okay, so first we have search movie, I'm pretty sure. And in fact, what I should really do is put this on the side. Search movie, and this has search result as a type, which means I'm going to have to import that over there. And this takes a string title and an int page. And then I'm going to have open close brackets here. I'll put my function inside there. Then I have another override here, which is going to be movie details, get movie details. And this is just going to take a string ID, same as before. I need to import that, save, and that's fine. Okay, so now let's look at the code here. Can I use anything here? Pretty much not. I don't think I can use any of this. Okay, so that's fine. The only thing I can really copy is the actual structure. What I'm going to do instead is keep my GitHub on the side, because again, I haven't worked with Hive in a really long time. If I had more time, I would have reviewed it ahead of time and this could have been smoother, but I don't have time for that. So the options here were either have a live stream which is not quite perfect, or just not record ever again. So here we go. Okay. GitHub does not want to show me everything. I'm going to make this a bit smaller actually. You guys don't necessarily need to see the GitHub one. And it's not going to be exactly the same. Here I have a future. Hive doesn't really need a future. And we haven't explained what Hive is. Hive is a local data source. Basically, it's a local database. It's a NoSQL database, which means it does not use SQL, as the name implies. And Hive is a really fast database, unlike something like SQLite. With SQLite, we need to use futures, we need to await for the data, because those things are just a little bit slow. Hive, on the other hand, is lightning fast. So we don't need futures, we don't need to use async await, But at the same time, we can do it. There's nothing stopping us from doing it. Here's the basic usage. Hive has something called boxes. A box is like a database or a table, something like that. And you can store something using box.put, and you can retrieve that data using box.get. So it's pretty simple. Hive does have a little bit of setup, which we'll go through later on, but it's not too important for now. And you can also just listen to the box the same way you'd listen to a stream. But personally, I like to have the separate classes. It helps keep your streams, your code much cleaner. I like to separate everything. Here you can see the benchmarks. Comparing the speed of SQFlite with Hive, you can see Hive is very fast, SQFlite is not. And that is why we need to await and use futures for SQFlite. But we do not need to use that for Hive. So yeah, get cached movie details is the equivalent of get movie details. Yeah, and I use the Hive movie search repo. I'm curious why I had a separate repo. Probably the reason I had that was simply because I was copying Reso Coder's code, so I wanted to have research repository. Should be in data. I remember I had some trouble with this stuff. Hive movie search repo. It will be this one. So this is the abstract one, which I extended movie search local data source. Yeah, so last time I tried to make everything really abstract to abstract away the fact that I was using Hive at all. But I'm not going to go so far this time because I just don't think it's necessary for a project of this code, of this size. If you can't tell, one of the things that has changed since the last time I was recording stuff is, well, my work got busier. Before I was worried a lot about clean code and the correct way of doing things. Now I'm just thinking, like, how can I get these projects done in time? That's what tends to happen after working for a while. Okay, so the first thing I have here is const strings, and I'm doing this to save the misspelling, because as you can see here, we have to use the name of the boxes, and if you misspell anything, you're just going to get the wrong data, and that's going to be a really annoying thing to debug. So whenever I have any string like this, which I need to use in one or more places, I always use const string and actually give it a name. That will help with misspellings. So let's say const string movie details box equals movie details box, and then we're going to say const string search results box equals search results box. So these two represent the box which will store this and the box which will store this over here. And then let's see what else we have here. Cache movie details. So that is a good point. In my local data interface, I forgot I actually need to store these things. Because I was trying to make it the same as the remote one, I completely forgot that in a local one, obviously, I also need to be able to cache these things. So one thing I'm going to quickly do is look at my GetX controller. Where is my GetX controller? Here. To see if I actually used that. Get movie, search movie. Okay. So I'm not currently caching it, so I need to do that here. And the other thing is here I used null.obs. This is definitely going to give you an error. Instead, you should use search results.obs. You need to give it something here, even if it's just the empty object or a placeholder object. You can't just do null.obs. That is That's not good. Okay. So now that I have this, I'm going to go back to my local data interface actually, because my local data interface is missing my caching things. So that's going to be void cache search results, and that's going to take a search results, and that's going to be this one, and then a void cache movie details as well, which is going to take a movie details like this. Okay. And here I use futures. Again, it's not really necessary to use futures with Hive. We'll try doing it like this. If it does give us an error for some reason, then we can add the futures later, but if I remember correctly, it's not necessary, so whatever. And because we did this, now this is going to give us an error here, because we need to override everything. Override. And I'm going to make this big temporarily so I can put this on the side, because remember, everything has to be spelled exactly the same way. Of course, you can also do it like this, which is probably a better way of doing it. And I want it to be ordered in the correct way. Can get rid of the to-dos. Save, close this for now, I don't need it. Make this smaller again. Okay. So I actually want to start with the getting. So search movie. Did I really call it that? Search movie. I would prefer to call it get movie details, get search results, something like that. But whatever, I called it search movie, so I'm going to keep it as search movie. So Hive is super simple. The only thing we have to do, and I say it's super simple while looking at my old code because I can't remember how to do it. But again, in the next module, we're going to go over Firebase, which is what most people use these days. And I can't find get search result, cache search, get cache search. Okay. So if search box equals null, search box equals await, open box, search box. Okay. So what I'm doing here, I have the box here. Okay, I see. So the same way in a regular database, something like SQLite, you need to actually open the database before you can do anything with it, right? While with Hive, you need to actually have the box object. So what I've done is I've defined it here, and then I've said if it hasn't been opened, if that box hasn't been opened, go ahead and open the box, and if it has been opened, you don't need to do that, so just get the box, whatever. Okay, so what we're going to do is say, first I'm going to give it a box of movie details box and a box of search box, and the reason this is giving me an error is simply because I have not I haven't imported Hive. So okay, that's fine. So back to search movie, and I'm going to do something similar, but it's not necessary. If the search box equals null, in other words, if that search box has not already been opened, go ahead and open that box. Now, last time I created a separate function. I can't really be bothered to do that. I did that last time because I was trying to follow every single rule of clean code, but I don't think it's necessary at all. So instead, I'm just going to say hive.open box, and that's going to take search box. search box here. And that's giving me an error because I should be using the string, I believe. Yes, I should be using the string, which is the name of the box. And this is why we made the const, to avoid, look at this, I have a misspelling here. If I didn't have this const, this would matter. The fact that I made it a const means it's irrelevant, because even if I misspell the actual string here, I will use the same misspelling everywhere. And as long as I use the same misspelling, it's irrelevant if I spell it correctly or not. However, if sometimes I spell it right and sometimes wrong, that's when you get the problems. Okay, so we're going to say hive.openbox, and in fact this should be search box equals hive.openbox, and this one needs to be awaited. So this is why I was using the futures, because although actually getting the data doesn't need a future, opening the box does need a future. So as a result, I'm going to wrap this in future. This gives me an error because it's no longer a valid override. So we're going to go back to our local data interface and make all of these futures, because all of them are going to do the same thing. The other thing we could have done is created a separate function called openbox, similar to what I did here, and then use the .then notation, which is the other way of handling futures, so that we don't need to mess with async and await. But yeah, that's not what I'm doing this time. Okay, so this is how you actually open that box, and once you have the box, it's really easy to get the data. All you have to do is have your box over there, which in this case is the search box, and then use the get function and use whatever ID you set for the data. And in this case, I used t title page. I'm thinking why I did this, just so it's obvious what is happening, so I can extract the data more easily. Okay, so this was just an ID which I created. There's no reason why it has to be exactly like this. I could very easily just say title page, and what I've done here is when you search for a movie, you search for the title, and then you have different pages of results, of course, the first, second, and third, and I want to put both of those in the data. The reason I ended up doing it like this here is just in case, like imagine if I searched for Star Wars, for example, and then I searched for Star Wars 2. I want to make it impossible to have a conflict between the title Star Wars 2 and Star Wars, the title, page 2, if you guys know what I mean. So that's why I made that kind of funky looking string. Again, there's no reason to do that. You don't need to do it the same way, but I did, and I'm going to keep it the same way, because just like there's no reason why you must do it, there's also no reason why you're not allowed to do it, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is how you get something. With Hive, it's so simple. Literally the only thing you need to do is pull up the box and then use that .get function. However, one thing you will need to do is set up the models, but we'll do that afterwards. Okay, so the same way we can get so simply, we can cache very simply as well. The only real difference is we use put rather than cache. So we're going to say the same thing as before. In fact, I'm just going to copy this. We're going to say if that box isn't already open, go ahead and open the box for me. In fact, the other thing I could do, now that I think about it, is I could have a function called initDatabase, right? I could make a function. In fact, I'm going to do that because I think it's going to make everything much smoother. I'm just looking at my folder structure to figure out where I should put that. I'm just going to put it directly in my lib folder. I'm going to make an initdb dot dot and but then I have to actually do the rest of it as well. I'm just thinking what the most convenient way of doing this is, because here I don't need the database initialized here to use it, really, because I can do that in a different file. And that's the way it would normally be done. But if I want to open the boxes in a separate file, then I need to actually have that database initialized. And 100% honest, I cannot remember how to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is look at my old code and try to figure out how I did that. So I use the di.init. Di here is going to be my dependency injection. And there should be a .init function somewhere. Yeah, here. And this is complicated and a mess, which is why I do not use GetX anymore. The GetX dependency injection is so much easier than this stuff. So I'll show you guys that afterwards. So this is how we initialize Hive. So we're going to say, and it has to be a future, initdb. And in fact, I could call it inapp, but for now, I'll just leave it as initdb. And because it's future, I'm going to use an async here. And then I'm really doing things out of order here. Hive. Where am I getting Hive from, though? Going to import that. I wonder if I used Hive Flutter. I didn't. So as I told you guys at the beginning, I do not remember 100% how to use Hive. I remember the majority, but not all of it. Okay. And then app documents directory. Okay. So what's happening here is that because Hive is still a local database, you need to tell your application where the database is. That's why we're using path provider. So that's just telling Flutter where the location of the directory. And in this case, I call it app documents directory, and I used await path provider .get application. So in order to do that, of course, I need to import package path provider / path provider .dot as path provider. And that's get application documents directory. Okay. I could really use more space here. Okay. And once I have that, I can use this, and it's giving me an error because the argument type directory can't be assigned, so I'm probably using .path, right? So the app document directory is the actual directory, but I want the path, which is a string. So this is saying this is the exact location. It's kind of like this kind of thing. In fact, we could print it out and see what it is. And then once you have this, you can register the different adapters. So one of the things which can be a tiny bit complicated about Hive is if you're using a complex data structure like we are, a custom data structure, you do actually need to register that with Hive. And all registering does is it just tells Hive how to process your data. It tells Hive how to save and read your data. Okay, so what I could do is say hivedb equals hive.init and put a final here. The type of this, I was hoping it would give me a type. Does init not return anything? Hive interface Hive. Okay, that's why I was using the dot notation. So now I need to actually make these adapters. What the adapter is, if I remember correctly, is basically, it's like a modification of the model. I don't like the folder structure which I used here. Will be here. Such a mess. As I mentioned in this old project, I was copying Riso Coder's stuff, and Riso Coder is really good. I highly recommend his stuff, but 100% honest, some of his stuff has a few mistakes on them, and his TDD course does have a couple awkward things. One of them is the folder structure. I copied his folder structure, and now that I'm a bit more experienced, I realize it's not really the best. Okay, so I believe this is not the adapter. I forget where exactly you make the adapter. Let's see if this helps us. Hive not only supports primitive list and map, but also any Dart object you like, which is the ones we're making. You need to generate a type adapter. Yes, so that's why we need the build runner. After defining it like this, we use these annotations to tell Hive, like, hey, this is, this is object I want you to be able to read and write. And then we use the build runner to actually generate that code. So the generated code would be the .g here. And this will have your adapter, see? And a lot of complicated code, it's not that complicated. And some slightly more complicated code using things like write bytes, blah, 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 which is easier to abstract away. Instead, we're just going to use these annotations. So what I'm going to do is look at let's go back to my models. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. I'm just going to annotate the model directly. I'm not going to extend it. The reason being, there's no real disadvantage to doing it. I can still use the Hive model with the data coming from my external API. That's fine. Okay. So what we have to do here is the first thing, at Hive type, and I think the ID is optional actually, and that just tells Hive that it's a class we wanted to listen to. And this is going to have to be imported from, I thought it was Hive Flutter, but apparently it's just Hive. And then I think this can be null, can't it? But I'm going to give it an ID in case I'm mistaken. The important thing about the ID here is simply that you cannot use the same ID twice. They do have to be unique. So we're just going to start on 0 because the ID is an int. And in each class, we're just going to move up. And that's all we're going to do. So this one's type ID 1, the next one will be type ID, sorry, this one's 0, the next will be 1, and so on. Then we're going to use Hive field, which, same thing as before, the Hive type basically tells Hive to listen to the entire class, whereas the Hive field simply tells Hive to listen to the the one specific field, and that's going to create the I closed it, the thing that has the dot right and the complicated stuff. And again, just give it the unique ID. In this case, the unique ID is per type, so I can reuse 0, 1, and so on in the next one. Field 2, and so on. What I'm going to do instead is use Control D for all of this to select everywhere where it says final. Then I'm going to say @Hive field, open and close brackets, enter. And now I can just do this. It makes things a little bit easier. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I have no idea what just pops up because I accidentally got rid of it. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. And 24. Okay, so that's the movie details, and we have to do this for every single custom class we created if we want to be able to use it with Hive. So this one's going to be @Hive type, and the ID is going to be 1. The previous one, remember, was 0. Now we're going to use Hive field 0 and Hive field 1, this one here, okay, that's fine. Then movie summary, @Hive type, this one can be 2, @Hive field 0, @Hive field 1, 2, 3, 4. Save this. And this should be the last one, @Hive type. I already forgot what we were on. I believe it's 3. And if I'm wrong about that, it doesn't really matter. If we skip 1, that's fine. Hive field 0. Because these are just IDs, it doesn't actually have to be exactly incremental. I could start on 100, I could use whatever, like 1,000 here, it doesn't really matter. But yeah. Okay. So now that I have this done, I can run my code generation. Flutter pub run build runner build, and hopefully it doesn't have any issues. Sometimes Hive code generation fails, and I remember that the bug was quite an annoying one, which I had a few times as well in my own projects. I remember also Matei Risocoda, he had the error in one of his videos, and I forget the exact fix for it. I think it's something like changing the version of the SDK, but this time it seems to have worked. So let's, I forgot to make the part. Okay, that was my mistake. When using code generation, you have to tell Flutter, you have to tell your whatever to actually, make that file. And the way you do that is by saying part and then give it the appropriate name, which in this case is just going to be the name of the file .g dot. So here I'm going to have movie details .g dot, and of course that does not exist yet. Part movie rating .g.dart, part movie summary.g.dart, part search results.g.dart. So what's going to happen is this time when the build runner sees this .g.dart, the part thing, it's going to know that, hey, this is where I should be generating the new file. And because I did not save these files, that's why I didn't make these ones. So let's try again. And this one didn't work because I misspelled it. So this needs to be called exactly the same as the file here. Because I misspelled it, this one, even though it was saved, was not generated. So I'm just going to run this again. And this time it should give me all the files. So now you can see I have all these nice generated files for me. And this has the adapters which I need. And again, what this adapter is going to do is it's going to help Hive to turn my Dart code into binary code or whatever kind of code it uses. I'm not 100% sure. So it can store our data for us. So that's really nice. I can close all of this and go back to my init database and open up my previous one, which was here. Right. So with Hive, you can store primitives, strings in stubbles without registering the adapters. However, because we're storing a more complicated data type, we do need to generate to store that adapter. I'm just looking here how they do it. I was hoping to see how he I can't even remember the word he uses. Registers the adapter, that was it. Register. So it's not on the main page, it's got to be somewhere in the README, and I don't really feel like doing it right now because I know I can just do it like this. And here we have the movie detail. No. It's going to be movie details adapter, and that's going to be auto imported. If you guys don't know this dot, what this does is it says takes whatever I had before and just it's something like final new var equals whatever, some kind of new var, and then it's like taking this and saying new var dot function and then new var dot function, right? It's like taking this actual variable and doing that whatever function to this variable, because normally if I just use a single one dot function, what this would do is say, all right, take the new variable, and then once I have this variable, apply the new function, and then I apply this second function to the result. But when I use the double dot, I say don't apply it to the result, apply it to the initial one. So new var dot function is the same as this, right? So applying it to the initial variable rather than the result. So then we can register the adapter, which is the movie rating adapter, and then register adapter movie summary adapter. And why did this one not auto import? Create class. Why does this have a... That's why, because I misspelled it, which means I need to generate this again, which is why it was not importing it for me. Okay. And then dot register adapter, and this last one is the search results adapter. There we go. And save that. Okay, so by doing this, now Hive knows how to save and read our custom classes. Okay, and we don't need to worry about the rest of this for now. Again, at the end of this, we're going to use GetX's dependency injection to initialize our entire application, and that's going to make it much simpler. Okay, now, I don't know if you guys remember why we were doing this. The reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to have this open box thing in every separate function. So what I'm going to do instead is just say hive.openbox, and then we can give it the name of the box here. Hive.openbox, and then this one here, and that means we need to import the other one. And this needs to be awaited because this, of course, is a future. And now that we're doing this when the app is initialized, we no longer need to do this if thing. If search box equals null, do whatever, because it's never going to be null. We're initializing it at the However, okay, what we can do here is say search box equals await, whatever, box movie details box equals await hive.open box, and then we can pass these two boxes here, final, this dot movie details box, this dot search box, like this. Okay. And then when we're initializing the database, we can pass in search box like this, and movie details box like this. But we are not going to do this here. We'll take a look at how we'll do this at the end. Again, this has to do with the dependency injection, so we'll do that later. But yeah, that's just kind of like as a preview. So now we can define this here, and then we no longer need to worry about the errors in the state afterwards. So then we no longer need to do these if checks. So we spoke about a lot of things to get to where we were before. And as a result, I'm just thinking. So here we're on cache, search result. So to do that, the only thing we have to do is take our box and say put, and then use the, this is an ID, right? This basically says, like, I don't know if you guys have worked with Firebase. Again, that's going to be the next module. It's just saying, look at this specific address, look for this ID and get the data from inside. So of course, this ID and the ID we generate here have to be identical. And in this case, the way we're going to do that is by using our results dot title, I believe. Yeah. And then p dash results, and I think I had page. I did, so that's fine. And why is it giving me an error? Because they need two different things. The first is the key and then the value. Okay, so this is the key, and the value is just going to be that result. Okay, And it should be, and because of that, now we can remove the futures and the asyncs from here. Can we? Oh, this is a future as well. Okay, that was my mistake. I did not realize that put is also a future. And how about get? Get is not a future. So I can remove the async from get, but I cannot remove it from put. Okay, so that's fine. And of course, we're going to have to do the same thing here. That's fine. And then over here, that is okay over here. Okay, and it's going to be the same thing here. So we're going to return the movie details box, in fact, dot get, and I probably just use the ID because the ID should be unique already. I shouldn't need to generate anything strange like this. At least I hope it is. Okay, whatever. And then here we're going to, and this returns void anyway, so I don't need to return it. The only thing I need to do is actually do that, and I'll await it. Okay, so again, an async, await, and then it's going to be movie details. Wow, not what I wanted. Movie details, await, not async. Movie details box dot put, and I'm just going to put it in that ID, and then the value is going to be the movie details. And this is giving me an error because this needs to be a future here. And okay, this is giving me an error because it's movie details dot ID, and it's probably IMDb ID. That's what I called it. Okay. So the ID we're using here, I'll just type it again. DBM. I think I misspelled this. Why does it say IMDBM ID? Whatever, I don't care, it's not important. Just leave it like this. So all this is saying is take the create, like in the movie details box, create a key, which is the ID of the movie details, and store the movie details object in there. And for Hive to know how to store that movie details object, what we had to do was register the adapter. So yeah, that's why we did all of this stuff, and that's why we used the code generation to actually make the stuff here, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't really want to write all of this by hand. That does not look fun to work with binary writers. But yeah, he did it for us. The creator of Hive has done it for us, so we don't have to. Now, maybe you guys have worked with other databases before, maybe you haven't. Hive is remarkably easy. There is a bit of setup because we had to, register the adapters and create the boxes, whatever. But let's compare that to an SQL database. In an SQL database, I would have had to create the tables. I'd have to open the different databases every single time I was doing anything, and it's just much slower. So it's just a lot of work. Plus, on top of that, you just need to learn SQL. Now, honestly, as a software developer, you're pretty much expected to know SQL. I don't think you can get a job as a software developer if you don't know SQL. But that said, I haven't used SQL since, I cannot remember. It's been literally years. These days we're moving away from it with stuff like Firebase, of course, with Mongo and other NoSQL solutions. There's not really much need for an SQL database like we would have needed before. So as a result, you get these things where people like myself have literally not used SQL in years, but I still think you need to know it. And Hive is another database which just helps us not use SQL. And especially this part of the code, when we look at how simple it is to actually get the code, to get the objects and put an object in its place, it's so much easier than having to write something like, I do not remember, I don't remember my SQL at all. I was going to give you guys an example, but I cannot remember at all. Was it like search star get star? I can't remember. Whatever, I'm going to have to review my SQL because I did want to show you guys how to use SQL databases as well, but I'm not going to do that now. Okay guys, so that's going to be it for this video, this live stream. This basically showed us how to use Hive and all that stuff, but let's look to see if I have any comments. I just have another one from Samuel saying hi, welcome back. So hi to you as well, it's a pleasure to see you. And guys, that's going to be it for now. So myself, videos, I'm gonna head out. So yeah, take care guys, see you next time.